Hi guys, and welcome to the Book Refuge. We are here for my October wrap-up, and buckle in, guys. First, I want to show off my cute mug that I got from Barnes & Noble. Look, it says Bookworm, and it's so big. Like, it can fit the, 8 ounces, or this 12 ounces. Like, I could have soup in this. Sorry, it's so beautiful. All right, October was a return to form for me, and I love it. As you know, I used to put away about 15 to 20 books in the first half of this year. And during the summer, I was in kind of sort of a book slump. But also, I was reading really large fantasy books, so that's part of the reason why I wasn't getting through everything. And lately, I've been letting myself read my romances again and just enjoy the wonder of historical romance and my beautiful people. And you know what? It was a good choice because I read 15 books this month. 4 of them were 5 stars. 5 of them were 4 stars. And then, 6 of them were 4 stars. 1 was a 3-star and 2 were 2 stars, and I DNF'd 1. So on the whole, we had a not that it's better than anything else. It was just a very good reading month for me, and I'm really excited to talk about everything. So that being said, I'm sure you see this video is really long, which I hope you love. I love long wrap-ups when people talk about things. However, everything that got less than 4 stars, we're not going to talk about for very long. I, in general, do pretty good Goodreads reviews, especially if I really didn't like something. So if you want to know more, my Goodreads is always linked down below, and you can check that out. So without further ado, let's buckle in. The first one I have up is my DNF for the month, which was Hidden Bodies by Carolyn Kepnes. On my notes I wrote you, but that was the first one. Don't have a lot to say about this. I got probably this far into it. I hate Joe. I know you're supposed to hate Joe. I didn't enjoy being in his head. I don't care what he's doing. All I wanted to do was someone to be smarter than him. And he seems to just interact with really stupid people. Everything's pretty easy for him. Even when he panics about it, he's always able to, murder the people he wants to murder and keep getting away with it. And I just didn't care. So I DNF'd this because I had so many more fun things to read. And this was my try at reading a thriller for October, and I didn't like it. And granted, I didn't pick a great one because Joe sucks. And I'm not really a fan of how it's written. The first one was interesting because it was that one where he was talking to you and stalking you, and it was kind of creepy. And the TV show is pretty interesting, so maybe do that instead. Next, my 2-star read, The Stone Sky by NK Jemisin. I know, no one is more surprised than me. I was very excited to see how this series was going to wrap up, and I'm hurt by it. The 5th season is still on my favorite list for the year. I thought it was such an interesting way to tell a story. I was very intrigued by the world and what was going to happen, and this just... the check that the first one wrote me, this one bounced for me. And a lot of people disagree with me, guys. A lot of people think this trilogy is fabulous, and I don't blame them. I just could not connect with the characters as much as I wanted to. I thought a lot of choices the author made were not made for me, and that's okay. It's okay. But I rate on enjoyment. If I was rating on how it is really written, this would be 4 or 5 stars, probably 5. It's beautiful. It's cool. It just feels like it's being too pretentious, and I wasn't in the mood, especially after the second book really drug on for me. It was hard to push through that, and I still gave it a good rating. I did a dedicated review. I said I have a lot of hope for this. And then when I got to this one, it was more of the same, and then a pretty rushed ending. I was really angry with the book. So I'm sorry. Find someone else who will praise it. There are lots of people. I'm an outlier in this situation. Next, another one that's going to make people mad. Peter Pan. This is 2.5 stars for me. I read this. It is my dear friend's Murphy. It's her favorite book, and a lot of people love it. My friend Becca loves it. So many people love this book, and I'm sorry, but I just didn't. It started with a lot of whimsy. It's just not the kind of story that I enjoy. I actually like some retellings of Peter Pan better than I like this, because this is like, it's leaning on being a children's book, but it's also one of those that is like really dark, and Peter is kind of crazy. And, you know, they talk about murdering children just so flippantly, and I didn't really get the point. And as you can tell, like, I need to connect with characters, and I didn't connect with any of them. And even though it was an easy read, and this is a beautiful book and it means a lot to people, it didn't connect with me. And I think that's really important, especially when you're talking about classics. Like, one person's favorite classic is somebody else's like slog, and this just wasn't it for me. And this was the book that you guys chose for me to read, and in our group chat, I feel like only one person really finished it, and it was Manda, and I think she forced herself through it too. So I know I'm not alone. I just feel bad that I couldn't love one of Murphy's favorite books because she loved my favorite book. But what can you do? There's plenty other books we agree on, and this just isn't one of them. Next, Queen of Ruin by Tracy Banghart. This was 3 stars for me. I was adequately intrigued to start this book. Grace and Fury was a viewer pick for me a couple months back. These are pretty short books. However, this is only a duology. And normally I love that, because it's nice not to keep getting drug on and on with a story, and, you know, things never having a satisfying ending. Or, I mean, that's not what I mean. How do I say this? The premise of this is really interesting. Grace and Fury, the premise is that the king has, or the superior, he's the king, he has these things called graces, not these things, these women called graces. They're treated like things, so excuse the Freudian slip. And he has 3 women who are basically his concubines, and they're the ones who produce his heirs. And Serena and her sister Nomi, Serena is trying to become the Grace, and Nomi is going to like be the one who looks after her. And due to like a cruel twist of fate, Nomi ends up being the Grace, and Serena gets caught with her sister's book and gets sent to an island called Mount Ruin, which is basically a punishment island where the women are forced to like fight to the death to survive. In this book, we're dealing with the consequences of that, and there were some very interesting things. However, we were rushed through everything. Like, it was like this book, it was like I was watching something on fast forward. The way that it ended was so much ambiguity. Like, a big change has happened in the kingdom, and I'm like, okay, I don't buy that anyone's just going to go along with that when they've been doing the opposite for, you know, 100+ years. They're not just going to change it because one person says so. So it just, I hate saying not believable because it's fantasy, but I was just annoyed. And so, especially because Serena had a very interesting character arc. Nomi, not so much. Nomi actually regressed for me, in my opinion, in this one. The love interests were pieces of paper, which was frustrating, because in making women strong, you don't have to make men insignificant. And I really wanted to see more of like, we're coming together to do something, and I really didn't feel that. So it just felt incomplete, and the ending was absolutely ridiculous. But I gave it 3 stars just because it was really quick. I feel like this is actually good, like, younger YA fantasy, like 13, 14-year-olds could really read this. There's some dark, violent aspects, but the meaning, I think, is pretty strong. In fact, it kind of hits you over the head with it, and I think it could be good for younger readers who can handle a little more on the violence. Like, I would have been good with this at 13 or 14. Next, we have an E-arc, which I have stayed away from those for the most part lately, but I read The Shrike and the Shadows by, I wrote this down, Chantal Guettery and A.M. Wright. This book comes out in January, and this is a wonderful mix of genres. It's actually a new adult, and it is horror, thriller, fantasy is how I would describe it. So the setup of this story is there's this village, and it's a Hansel and Gretel reimagining. And Hansel and Gretel, since it's new adult, they're about 20, 21 years old. I think they're twins. actually don't know that. I think they're twins. And they've lost both their mother and their father. And in this village, there's a witch, which is called the Shrike, who is luring men to their deaths. And then she cuts out their heart and delivers it back to their families. And also there's this new preacher who's come to town who is telling everybody that the Shrike isn't really a witch, the Shrike isn't really, that it isn't really this magical witch, but that it's a person in their midst. He's also a really creepy preacher, and he's made some moves on Gretel, which she spurned, and now he's trying to convince everyone that she's a witch. And Hans hasn't done a great job of helping his sister because there are all these women who want to get with Hans, and he keeps using his sister as an excuse why he can't get married, and so it makes all these women really jealous of his sister. So not great support of your sister here. But yeah, people are acting like Greta is a witch. I keep calling her Gretel, but it's Greta. And it was very exciting. So the reason I really liked it is that it's a new adult fantasy, but it wasn't all about the smut in the story, okay? There was honestly so much else going on. There is some romantic situations, but they were not the entire purpose of the book, which is great because NA really gets the rap that this is what it is. And so I was very excited. I'm very happy to promote this. I'm giving it 4 stars, just not quite 5 because some of the story elements, I was like, what's going on? There is going to be a sequel to this. I really, really suggest it. I hope that it comes out in physical form because I want it. I hope it's not just like an e-copy because I really want to own it. And I really do suggest it. I think it's a great step in the right direction for the new adult genre because it really blends those elements that, I've kind of talked about before where I want more characters who reflect me without them having to be 30-year-olds or having to be 15, right? And there's nothing wrong with either of those. It's just that it'd be nice to have, a lane where you fit. Like, it doesn't have to be completely childlike, but it was pretty dark. And this story, I'm trying to think, there's trigger warnings for sexual assault, minor, but, I'm just trying to warn people, as well as body horror for sure, because she cuts out people. But it was spooky. It was exciting. There is, I don't want to spoil it. There's some fun other fantasy elements inside, and I liked it. It was good. So check that out if you're interested. I'll probably purchase it when it comes out, so I'll remind you guys. All right, next, another ebook that I read. This one was Silver Wolf by Kate Avery Ellison. I gave this 4 stars as well. This is the sequel to Red Rider, which I read back in July. Couldn't believe it was already that far back. This is about a girl named Red. Her name is Red Rider. And so this is a post-apocalyptic, there's basically werewolves kind of run society, and there are certain females who have the gene to be able to breed with them, because werewolf females, they cannot breed. Sorry I'm using that word, but that's how it's used in here. And so there are only certain females that can carry on the line. So you can get turned into a werewolf, but you can also be born one as well. And in the last book, Red got captured because she's one of the girls who is able to do this, and she didn't turn herself in. This is also heavily based on A Handmaid's Tale, which was why I docked a star this time. I really loved Red Rider, but Silver Wolf heavily, heavily relied on A Handmaid's Tale, and I didn't like it. I liked it more when it was just hinted at that this is how the world is set up, but we get put into it, and it's kind of an exact copy in some ways, and I didn't like that. But it won me over in the second half because Red makes some very bold decisions. I can't. The series is really good. This is actually a YA fantasy. I thought it was new adult, but it's not. There's no elements as of yet, and I've read 2 books, of any, sexual situations. She is 19, I think, but it's still categorized as YA. and I would call it YA. It's very dark though, so that's why I thought it was NA. But again, we've had this discussion. What constitutes NA doesn't always mean the sex parts of it. I would consider this NA. It's just that it's categorized as YA in Amazon. So I definitely suggest these. They're on Kindle Unlimited if you have that. Otherwise, they were only like $3 each. And it was really fun. The cliffhanger though, thankfully this is self-published, and so there should be another one coming soon. And I really want to try more of Kate's other stories because it was good. Both me and my friend really loved these. I read these with my friend Shauna. I told her about them, and she read 1 and 2 in a day. They're only about like 200 pages each, which is also not enough. I want so much more. But she writes more than trilogy, so hopefully she'll write a lot. But you'll see why. I gave 4 stars to A Heart for Milton by Trudy Brasseur. Okay, so this is a reimagining of North and South, which I also read this month and which is much higher up on the list. This is a self-published novel, and this author, if you've ever read North and South, which isn't a lot of people, but also if you've seen the BBC version, the ending is very abrupt, okay? As soon as everything comes to fruition in North and South, boom, fade to black, it's over. And you're just like, ugh. You're just like, what? We're just done? We're just done. Okay, we're just done. All right. And it's very frustrating. It's a very beautiful story, but it's almost like the author was like, it worked out. Everyone's fine with it. I was not. So I found this through Goodreads, and I was so happy that I could order a copy of it to support this author. And it starts about 3 chapters from the end of North and South, and then it makes a twist, and then it tells a year after that, which I know sounds confusing, but basically it's just like a reimagined happily ever after for them. And it was trashy in a good way. Trashy as in that like fan girling, it just everything's pretty much perfect for them. There's no like real obstacles in their way. It's just them being in love and it being awesome. And so I give it 4 stars because it was great and it was everything I wanted. And I was like, oh, this is why I love this day and age that someone would do this. And it was very respectful though. This author, you can tell, is just in love with the story. Like, this is all just so beautiful. And that's why I rate it really highly, is like, it's not the best like story ever. It's very repetitive. Like the same situations keep happening, you know, like about 3 too many times, but I don't care. It was perfect. It was lovely. And I'll probably like reread parts of this because I don't need to reread the whole thing, but I would reread parts of it. All right, This Cruel Design, I gave 4 stars. This is Emily Savada. This is the sequel to This Mortal Coil. The 3rd and final book, This Vicious Cure, comes out in January, and I'm very excited for it. So, how to describe this was so hard. Let's see what I put in my notes for this one. It was very fast-paced. I felt like we were introduced to too many new characters. Like, we just kept getting character after character. And I was like, do I need to know this person? Or are they going to die right away? It was just hard to tell. So, however, this is still one of the most unique stories. This is a disease, like an outbreak story, and the outbreak keeps changing and like evolving, and they just can't get ahead of it. And it involves genetics, and it involves changing your genetics, and it involves not being able to choose what your genetics are, and it's just so unique. I actually started a new like Goodreads page, like not group, but like shelf just because of this book. And it's called Unique Reads, because I was like, you know, there's just some stories that break all the molds. Some things are predictable, and other things how did the author come up with that? And she's brilliant. And so this book took me a while to read. It was kind of a drag, but when I look at it overall, it's a 4-star for me because I always want to know what she's going to do next. And I want to know what she's going to do next in the last one. So 4 stars for this one. So Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kimmerer. This is an arc that I didn't receive. It was at a thrift store, and it got given to me by someone who found it. And I'm so happy. This book comes out January 7th, so not too long. This is a sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and I loved it so much. I wrote in my notes that, so I got this back in August, and I read like this much of it, and then I stopped, and it's just been sitting on my shelf, and I was like, oh, I need to finish this. And I'm so torn because I'm really glad it was after I'd read a couple books in a row that I wasn't loving, and I was like, I just need a shot in the arm. And I was like, you know what, I want to finish this before the end of this year so that I can, talk about it. Not that it needs any hype. It's going to get a lot of hype when it comes out. But I just flew through the rest of it in a day. And so the last book, the point of views were Ren and Harper. And Harper, spoiler alert, things go okay-ish in the first book. And there's this character named Gray in the first book that everybody loved, and they thought there would be a love triangle, and they were really mad that there wasn't because they like Gray more than Ren. Well, Gray has plans. Or no plans, but the book has plans for Gray. And so Gray is a point of view character, as well as this new woman named Leah Mara, who is the daughter of the villain of the first book. And she's the oldest daughter, but she's not the heir, because in their kingdom, you have all your children, and then you pick the heir, which I'm like, ooh, man, this is why people fought wars and stuff, is do it in birth order. But Leah Mara is okay with that. She doesn't want to be the heir. She doesn't think she's good enough to be the heir. And there's a secret that her and her mother know about Gray, which if you've read the first book, you know what the secret is, but I'm trying to be vague. And Gray is running from this secret, and somehow him and Leah Mara end up in the same place. And their love story was awesome, and this story is really good. And if you read the first one, you're going to want this one. The only reason it's not 5 stars is I can't tell you, but there's a thing that's really frustrating me, and I hope that in a year and a half from now, when we get the third and final one, that I'll feel better about it. But there are some things that are done with Ren and Harper that I don't like. And it just is really hard to get over it. But I love Gray and Leah Mara. This book was so good. I had a wonderful time. So much. And so it was 4.5 stars, and I can't wait for more people to read it because I can't talk about it. Arcs are a curse, guys. They're not as fun as you think, because you read the book and then you can't talk about it with anyone because they don't want to be spoiled for it. So I can tell my sister about it. She's the only one I can talk to because she doesn't care if she gets spoiled. But I can't wait for you to read it. It's so good. So 4.5 stars for that. And now we're into the 5 stars. And I have 5 of them. And it's such a great life. Where to start? Okay, well, let's start with this beauty that I already kind of talked about. North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is a classic I buddy read with Murphy, and I was so glad she liked it. I love the BBC show miniseries with Richard Armitage, and I wanted to read this, but I tried to read it before, but it was a long time ago, and classics aren't my jam. You know how it goes. And so it didn't really get a good chance for me. And Murphy loves classics. And so I was like, would you read this with me so that I will read it? And I had so much fun. I took so many notes. I had such a great time. These characters are so flawed, but you just love them. And they're going through such hard times. You just want to scoop in and snuggle them. At least I do anyway. And I just had such a great time. I love Mr. Thornton. He is flawed, but he wears his heart on his sleeve while at the same time seeming like he has a gruff exterior. But because we get to see into his head, we realize how much things hurt him. He has an amazing relationship with his mother. And I don't mean that in a Norman Bates type of way. I mean, these two people, they single-handedly, together, so double-handedly, raised their family out of poverty. And it's amazing. And so they have a certain amount of pride that comes with that. And they have a chip on their shoulder because society doesn't treat them fairly. But they're so cool. And he has a younger sister who's just this vain, spoiled child because they've given her everything. She doesn't remember the days when it was hard, and she's kind of spoiled. And then we have Margaret, who her father has just given up his livelihood as a pastor to move to the industrial city of Milton to be a tutor. And he tutors Mr. Thornton. And her mother's very ill, just don't understand what could have happened that made her father do. And granted, like, that mystery, that isn't the point of the book. It's just they're so frustrated that their lives have had to change this way. And so there's a lot of like bitterness she has to work through while wanting to honor her father. And she's very judgmental of the town that she moves into, and it gets her and Mr. Thornton off to a rough start. So it has very strong vibes of Pride and Prejudice, while having a lot more weight, in my opinion. So Pride and Prejudice, which is a beautiful story and is also a wonderful classic to read, and just gets easier every time I read it. I love it. But it doesn't seem to have as much weight. Like, it's a little more of a like fluffier romance. Like, there's some heavy stuff happening in there. Mr. Wickham, child molester. Let's just say it. He is. There's a lot heavier things. There's a lot of death in this book. There's death of parents. There is death of friends. There's a lot of death because it's a hard time. And so it has a lot of vibes of Pride and Prejudice, but also there's a lot more weight. And I cried. Oh, I cried so many times. Oh my gosh. Of just beautiful writing and guys, my heart. It's so good. So this was 5 stars, and it is my new favorite classic. I've only read about like 20 in my lifetime, but this is my favorite right now. It's so good. I highly recommend it, especially if you're someone who likes classics. All right. All the rest of these are romance. If you can't tell, I mean, North and South is romance too, but I'm excited. Next, I read Dragonfly and Amber, which I read at the very beginning of the month. Look at this. I read this with my friend Jo from Not So Average Jo. She's still not done with it, but she should be by the end of this week. This was great. It was 5 stars. I have a full review for this coming out in, I'm sorry, it's not till December, but I'm starting this series of reviewing the Outlander books. So November 2nd, the Outlander review comes out, and then December like 5th or something, this full review comes out. It's like 30 minutes long. It's really great. But I loved this. I never tire of spending time with this family, with Jamie and Claire. It's just them at this point. I never tire of it. I never tire of seeing how their relationship grows, how they've changed, how they're becoming a closer couple. And it also hurts so much because there's some certain events that happen in this one that you know are coming like a freight train for these people, and you just want to grab them up to you and protect them, and you can't. There's nothing we can do. And it's tragic and it's beautiful, and as you can see, I just annotated everything, and I love them so much, and I can't wait to read Voyager. I'm going to start it soon, and I'm just thriving for it. I'm so excited. Okay, so I also read Say No to the Duke by Eloisa James. This was so fun. I just put this in a recommendations video because it was very unique. This story was not the run-of-the-mill romance that I thought it would be. There was a lot of PTSD that was dealt with our hero, and the way that the ton is treating him is very sad and frustrating. He was the only one who survived a battle that he took his men into, and it was actually the fault of a superior officer that they were in that position, but he's the one who got blamed for it. And so he's wounded, he's back home having PTSD, and people are treating him kind of cruelly, and he is friends of the Wilds. This is the 4th book in the Wilds of Windlow Castle series. That's hard to say. And he has an eye for Betsy. And Betsy has it into her head that she has to marry a respectable person and not her brother's friend who just keeps teasing her and all these things. Also, Betsy wants to dress up like a man and go on the town just for a night because she wants freedom and she feels like she doesn't have it. And so Jeremy agrees reluctantly to help her do that. So that's how this book is sold, and you think that it's all about her getting to dress like a man and do all these things, and it's not. So I want you to know that going in, if you're looking for you know, that, I don't know how to explain that, but if you're looking for like girls going undercover or like girls doing that, because that's a thing that happens in historical romance a lot, this isn't that. There's a very small situation of it happening. There's some funny older duchesses in this one who were a joy. I love that trope in historical romance as well. But it was more about these two. A lot of people around them realized that they should be together. So, however, the Say No to the Duke is Betsy's about to get engaged to a duke. And the next book in the series is called Say Yes to the Duke. So hopefully he will get his happy ending as well, because the duke that she's interested in, he's a really great guy. He's just kind of stuffy and he's not the guy for her, but he definitely is not painted as a bad person. He's wonderful. He actually stands up for Jeremy a couple times. So we really like him. He's just not the one for Betsy. He'll have someone in the next one. So this was great. I love it. Eloisa James is fabulous. She's great. Next, we'll talk about Hello Stranger by Lisa Kleypas. I just finished this book. This is the 4th book in the Ravenel series. And guys, I love this series so much. I was just telling my friend, the book covers of these don't do it justice. Here's a little bit of a more fun one. This is about... Oh, it's so good. This is about Garrett Gibson, who is a doctor. We've met her in the previous 2 books of the series. She helped deliver a couple of the ladies' babies, and she works for Mr. Winterbourne. She is his one of his doctors on staff for his department store. He has this huge department store he owns. It's kind of like Macy's or something like that. Garrett is actually based on a real-life woman who was the first female physician in London. And she got through as kind of a fluke. And they actually changed the laws as she left so that more women couldn't become physicians at the time. But she was really strong in the suffrage movement, and she helped train other women to be physicians, and she was amazing. So based on a real character, in this book, we're dealing with her, and then Ethan Ransom, who the way he's connected is he is actually a bastard Ravenel. His mother had him out of wedlock with a Ravenel. And the Ravenel, the older generation, was not so great. And so he has a lot of anger against the Ravenels for no reason. He is also an undercover, like, not a police officer, but kind of like an undercover agent, kind of a spy, and he takes a liking to Garrett after they met in a previous book, and he's kind of been following her, not in a creepy way. I know that sounds like a creepy way, but he's intrigued by her, and so he keeps showing up in places. And at the beginning of this book, she gets attacked, and now Garrett, she knows some self-defense. She's been taking self-defense classes because she works in a little bit darker areas of town. She helps women in lower income places, and so she has some training. But Ethan, when he sees her in a fight, and he ends up having to help her because it's 3-on-1, so she really did need someone to step in, he decides to teach her some self-defense because she only knows like a martial arts, but it's a very like proper martial arts. And he's like, if someone's trying to kill you or rape you, they're not going to follow the rules that you're used to. And so he teaches her some down and dirty tricks. And I'm sorry, I'm talking so much. And as with the other books in the Ravenel series, this is not just about the romance. There is a bigger, and he can't put himself in a situation to have a love interest. But Garrett really likes him, and she's willing to go for it. And it gets them into some tough situations. And so I love this series. If you want a little more kick to your historical romance, I'm telling you, don't be deceived by these covers. They very much fit into the historical romance genre, but there is more to these stories. They're very good. The family is amazing. You know that is one of my trigger words. Amazing family, amazing friendships. I love it. You should check it out. All right. And my final and most favorite book I've read in a long time for specific reasons. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. Guys, I read The Air by Grace Burrows, and I talked about this extensively in a vlog. I'll try to find the one where I talk. I don't say what's in them, but if I do, I will link it up there. This book touched me in a really amazing way. And I say touch me as a pun because, as I say in the vlog, the main character of this, his name is Gale Wyndham. He has a love language of physical touch. And I've never seen it done in a book. And again, I have no idea if this was the author's choosing. I would love to reach out to her and find out. But he definitely has it, whether she wrote that as a character trait or not. And I've never seen it done in such a beautiful way before. I'm smiling so big. Love languages are this. There's something that you definitely talk about in relationships. There's this book by, I think it's Gary Chapman who did it, that there are these 5 love languages that is how we show and receive love. So there is words of affirmation, there is quality time, gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. And these are all how we like to receive and give love. So if you like to spend time with your friends, anyway, okay, don't have time for this lesson. Anyway, just wanted to tell you the point. Physical touch is often only shown in, romance as the sexual side of things. Now, when you are someone who is single and living on your own, that's not how you're giving and receiving love, because that's not what you're doing with your friends. To me, in my daily friendships, that means giving hugs. That means pats on the back of appreciation. That means shaking hands and looking people in the eye. That means when you watch a movie, snuggling close to your friends while you're watching a Disney movie. That physical presence near you is what helps you feel appreciated and loved. And not everyone is like that, right? There's all the other things. You can be any mix of these things, whatever. The character in this book 100% has that. And not only from the very first scenes. So, oh my gosh, I'm messing this up. I love this book so much, guys. I should have done its own review, but I just don't think anyone would watch it in that way. So the kickoff of this book is the Earl of Westhaven, Gale Wyndham. He has taken up a new house in London, and he's tired of his father trying to force him to marry, and he's just broken up with his mistress because she's trying to, his father told the mistress to get pregnant because he know that then his son would marry him. He wants an heir so badly that he's willing to do all these things. And Gale's just getting really frustrated with his dad. We love his dad. He's just a little he just got it wrong a little bit. And so anyway, Gale has set up this new house. He has a new housekeeper. One of the girls who works in his house, she gets stuck on the fire grate when she's going to clean something. And so she gets stuck. And she is also a mute, so she can hear but she can't talk. And he goes over to her and is trying to help her. And she's kind of scared, so she's crying. And the housekeeper comes in and sees him bent over this girl trying to help her, and she's crying. And so she cracks him in the head with a fire poker because she thinks he's trying to molest her. And this lady's name is Anna, his housekeeper, and she's young and beautiful and immediately realizes that she just hit an Earl over the head with a fire poker. And he is such a good sport about almost being killed by his housekeeper because he's like, well, you don't know me. You don't know that I wasn't molesting her. I wish you would have, spoken first. And so to kind of get back at her for hitting him, she's sure she's going to get fired, right? And arrested. He makes her be his personal maid for a little bit. Which is all in good fun. I promise you, it's all in good fun. Because he's just like, this is your punishment for hitting me in the head, is you're going to take care of me. And it's just a great start to a romance. I was hooked from page 5 of this. It was fantastic. And anyway, there is a mystery. The reason why Anna has not always been housekeeper, and her and Gail are immediately attracted to each other, but she's very resistant. And I was worried about a power dynamic situation. I can't tell you why that's not a thing because it's a spoiler, and I really want you to try this book if you like historical romance. Like, I really want you to read it. And so the power dynamic didn't end up being a thing. But again, the physical touch that is non-sexual in this book is everything I did not know I needed to read. And it inspires me to like find more literature where it happens or write it myself because I have never felt so loved while reading a book. So, and in the ways that this happens. So here's a few things. So Anna is working on his head and he's so tired. He leans into her just to rest his head on her stomach. Nothing else happening. That happens many times. In the room with her, wanting to talk, he just wants to pet her hand on the table. No sexual overtures. He just needs to be by her. There are situations in this book where they're not having sex and he just needs to sit by her and she needs it too. When he's interacting with his brother, he is always touching him. He has a hand on his shoulder or he's brushing his hair off his face or they hug. There's so much hugging. Like, I understand this seems crazy. I seem like a nut, but those of you I've shared with it already, you've been very supportive of me. And it's such a simple thing, guys. I know it seems so weird, but when you've never read that in a book, when you've never like seen your characteristics on a character, it's shocking and it touches you. And so there are many aspects of this book that could downplay it to people. But to me, the story was good. I was really disappointed. I was really not disappointed. I was really worried that I would be disappointed and then like not be able to praise it. But like the mystery is really good. What seems like a miscommunication trope is actually more. And there are real stakes to this story. And what looks like a light and fluffy historical romance touched me. This is now on my top list of favorite books. I don't know where it fits, probably a little lower down, but the way this touched my heart and the way it made me feel, this is 5-star plus for me, and it's fantastic. So I hope you will take me seriously and give this a try. If you like romance, if you like historical romance, if you're interested in trying, if you are physical touch, like me, if you've heard of that, but you've never seen it, please try this book. Please try it. It's amazing. All right. I haven't done a wrap-up that's been this long in a long time, but it felt great. I read 15 books. I had such a good time this month. I am just so excited to go in the last 2 months. I hit my reading goal this month. I'm at 126 books so far, and I loved it. So thank you so much for sticking with me. I put up new videos every Monday and Thursday, and don't forget that Outlander review series is starting this Saturday, so subscribe if you want to be around for that. Have a great day, everyone.